Why, hi everyone. We're going to be looking at Romanticism, which is easily my favorite artistic movement of the year. I'm going to try my best to not get bogged down on this. I know there's a lot of info in this PowerPoint or in this Google slide. So I'm going to try to break it down probably into two pieces and really focus on just like the characteristics to help you know if something is romantic or not. Now, it's really important to kind of understand the background of romanticism before we dive into like the different parts. So you really have to put yourself into the mindset, into the contextual time period of romanticism. So think about it. Europe had just been in this cold, methodical, philosophical Enlightenment age, neoclassicism, where everything we did was like we looked back to all those earlier versions of architecture and art and understandings of government, and everything was rather cold and dead and been there, done that, blah, blah. We also had the French Revolution, which tried to, you know, play up and use these Enlightenment ideals of people having self-determination and the right to vote and all people having inalienable rights and liberalism of the economy. And largely it left people feeling scared, terrified, dead. And it didn't seem to fully work. And so you have that half or those parts, but then you also have this like growing frustration with industrialization, right? People looked at the world and it was just getting run over by modernity, right? They looked at machines and technology and coal mines and the pollution and all that, and it just looked like Mother Earth was dying, was being raped by science and industry, and even humanity was being raped in its innocence, and we were becoming nothing more than cogs in some machine. And so everything just felt terrible. And so really the romantic movement is like it's like a really like, kind of emo, backlash to like, hey guys, don't talk to me right now. I want to be alone. All right, sorry. But it was like this backlash to everything that was enlightened society and modernity, technology, and whatnot. All right, so here are the different characteristics. And so I think this really does help us break down when you're looking at art, if you're reading a poem, looking at literature, you'll know it's romantic if it's got these things. And so the top thing is romanticism is brooding. It is so emotional, emo, pouty, bratty, hypersensitive, and so that's a big part of it. And it really is a backlash to the Enlightenment that was like about cold rationality. Take feelings out. It's all about legal kind of logic. And now we're looking at it going, well, there's kind of a gestalt. There's a societal need that far outreaches just your individual rights. I mean, like we can feel that things are off. My people are not being nurtured, taken care of in this time period. All right, and so we see a lot of that actually coming from the continent. Even though England will really be the champions of the Romantic movement early on in Germany, for example, you get this concept of Strom and Drang, right? This like constant turmoil and inner fighting of happiness and then melancholy, inter turmoil. And so you have like these very emotional, but also very rebellious, kind of smart ass, socially critical people. And so I highlighted, oh, come back, Byron, don't hide. Here's Lord Byron. He's considered a nice example of a romantic hero. Because although relatively well off, right, he spent most of his time contemplating why the world was falling apart and horrible. He has a fantastic poem named Darkness, and I really would encourage you to check it out. I mean, it is exactly that, though, and it's like some deep, creepy, spooky stuff. But it's absolutely fantastic to check out. All right, so let's keep moving. All right, so we notice then the artist, the poet, even the musician, they're like that, like troubled genius. They're actually the philosopher. So in the Enlightenment, philosophers were philosophers. Now our artists are like our societal heartbeat. They're the ones representing what's right. They're the ones kind of like vomiting out the truth through their social criticisms. And oftentimes it teeters on revolution or propaganda. And it's definitely very spicy, hot kind of stuff. And so here are some examples in art of where we would see that rugged individual, right? So Caspar David Friedrich, we're going to see a lot of his work. He's one of the most famous romantic painters. And so this painting specifically has actually been on several AP Euro exams in the past, right? And you kind of get this faceless individual looking off to the horizon, to the future, but right, it's shrouded in fog and clouds, and so it's unclear really what the landscape is. It's unclear what the future holds. He knows that there's destinations out there, things that he desires or is longing for. He has a rough idea what lies beneath the surface, just like we have a rough idea what lies beneath his exterior, his surface as well. And so it's a fantastic painting. All right, I'm going to skip through a lot of them. We're not going to have time to go over each of them. You can go back and kind of analyze them as you go. All right, so the rugged individual, here are some more. Right, we look at them as the dreamer, right? That unless man challenges himself to go into nature or to sit down and think and to criticize society, they can never really truly get in touch. And so a lot of the art is meant to show a man in preponderance, in a kind of a transcendental moment, right, where they're contemplating things. So I absolutely love this one. This is another Caspar David Friedrich, The Dreamer. Right, and a couple things that I think really help us understand it. One, again, we have a solitary individual, one man alone, and now notice what he's looking at, right, is bathed in light. It's warm tones and it's illuminated, and it's simple. It's beautifully simple, and yet he is stuck on the near side of this fence. He's not able to like just hop this hurdle in his mind. He's stuck in contemplation. There's a barrier between his current reality and his desired outcome, his desired mental health. And then here he is on this road. It's darker, whatever, and so he's kind of stuck in a modern question, longing to get over this hurdle and into the light. Now, is this tree not the same solitary individual stuck in darkness? In the background, we have light, or at least greater clarity of terrain. Now, this is this is really stupid, but if we were in class, I would normally take a day and show a bunch of clips from Lord of the Rings, and I would actually count it as a quiz. But because a lot of you said that you did not have access to the movie Lord of the Rings and maybe don't even know much about the movie Fellowship of the Ring, I thought, for the sake of coronavirus and whatnot, would skip it this year, which breaks my stupid little ginge heart. But in Lord of the Rings, right, here's Strider, Aragorn, right? He's a ranger who lives alone in the woods. He's a solitary figure, but he's actually the anointed, the chosen, the future king of the West. But he's alone to brood in his thoughts. Strider. All right. This is one of the most obvious and one of the most important elements of Romanticism, and probably why I can find it just in here in my heart. All right, it's the love of nature. It's the power, the fury of nature. Nature is by default righteous because it's incorrupted or uncorrupted. All right, and so when we look at nature, it is an element of righteousness, of Mother Nature. I mean, by default, nature is natural, and natural has to be good. And man then is unnatural. Society is unnatural. It's something that we've invented and thus bad. That sounds like my boy Rousseau. Oh, God, I love it. I love it so much. Oh, God, guys, I wish we could talk about this. There's so many questions I would love to tear apart with you. Oh, Romanticism. All right, so when we look at it, there is something then not only awe-inspiring about nature, I mean, it's kind of terrifying. When you think about it, Mother Nature has such power that, like a hurricane, Mama don't care. Oh, so you've got a little city? Category 5, see ya, right? A tornado doesn't care about your property. A flood doesn't care. A blizzard doesn't care. I mean, let's be honest, right now, in a horrible way. I mean, if COVID-19 is natural, right? It's of the natural world. Little microscopic viruses are able to bring the world to a halt. It's got me hiding in my basement talking to you via some screen. This is dehumanizing. This is exactly the point. But nature has so much power that something that I can't even see can break my whole society. Oh, God, romantics. So here we go. An avalanche ripping down some, mountain valley up in the Alps, and look at these people. Barely noticeable. They're minuscule, right, in comparison to this giant, avalanche. And the avalanche just like that, it just happens, right? Mother Nature didn't think about it, plan it. It's just this spontaneous awesomeness. And also, I think there's something to be said about the divine, pure light of nature as man is still in the darkness. One of my favorites, I really wish I had a full screen that we could show you, but look at how beautiful this scene is. And if you could block out just this bottom for a second, if you could just ignore it, and you just look at, the bottom part, the rest of the painting except for that, and here's this beautiful scene of a golden sunset, right? And this beautiful terrain. But what we don't really understand until you kind of think about it is this storm has come, ravaged, and then has disappeared. And in its way, look at these waves, these rolling 10, 12 footers, bringing in the wreckage of a ship that has been tossed into pieces out on the sea. But just as violent as that was, just as pure and natural, and back to the beauty of nature, right? Nature doesn't care or think about us. We don't deserve to be thought of. Now, not to get super religious, but I think there's a deliberate connection in this, right? So the deluge, I believe, then is a connection back to a biblical story, an Old Testament Torah story of the flood, right? And so the world had become so sinful and so crap, right, that God talks to Noah, build a boat because, I'm bringing the water, bro. And so if you look in the background, there's some fire off over here. I wonder if that's the industry, the society of 1830s and 1840s Europe, and God saying, enough. I'm so sick of you guys screwing this up. He sends the flood to wash away our sins, to start fresh. Think about that. God in the Old Testament destroys mankind in our sin and vice and corruption by using nature. Nature is the hand of God. It's righteous and it's pure. Oh, God, there's something beautiful about it. Tree of Crows, fantastic. I mean, again, look at it. You would never notice that there's a ship wrapped up in the ice here because, again, nature don't care. Joseph Turner, one of England's most famous painters of the time period. You see a ton of Turners, and all of them have similar themes of the power of nature, horrible storms or tumultuous seas, ships being tossed and thrown about. One last one on this topic, then I'll pause and we'll do a part 2 of this. We have a very famous painting, The Raft of the Medusa. The Medusa was a French frigate that went down off of West Africa. And after weeks of the sailors being stranded on bits of debris out in the sea, they went mad, baking in the hot equatorial sun. And so we have them resorting to cannibalism, drinking urine, drinking seawater, sharks coming up and picking off arms and legs of people. It's this horrible true story, grotesque as hell. But it shows again how man slides into these horrible, debased kind of behaviors, but yet nature just keeps on trucking. It's the great humbler of humanity, the power. Also kind of a cool idea, right? Vesuvius was able to wreck something as powerful as the Roman Empire with just a snap. And so take that, you classicist, neoclassical, folk. Your beloved Rome wasn't much compared to the blink of an eye of Mother Nature. And so my connection to Lord of the Rings, right? There's that scene where the river is summoned into a herd of horses, and it wrecks all these evil ring race chasing after Frodo. All right, that'll be part 1. I'll come back for part 2 here in a moment just to keep the files a little bit small, and I promise we'll try to run much faster. All right, see you in a